Welcome to Schein Time. We've got an all-football show today, baby. The legendary Josh PATE joins us ahead of week 0 for the college football kickoff. We're going to get into the pros, going back to college, Bill Belichick debacle, PATE's Miami national title pick, the playoffs, his Heisman, and more. I can't wait for college football. The Pro Bowl is dead. Lamar Jackson's on the run. The Falcons have no quarterback. But I do. His name is Josh Allen. We're joshing around on Schein Time.
Don't stop. Keep it coming, baby. Don't stop.
But vibes, Josh, and messaging and energy, and you reference a lot of things that are new. We reference a lot of things that are new. I think that was needed for the Bills. So in terms of that authenticity and the vibes, what is Coach Brady bringing differently to the table?
I think it's a mindset of it doesn't matter when, where, what time, what the weather is. Big part of his messaging is put the ball down. Like, we're going to be ready to go. It doesn't matter, like I said, when or where. The Buffalo Bills are gonna be ready to play football. And you're gonna have to play us. And to have that mindset switch and just be like, you know what, like, put the ball down. Let's go play some football.
That, of course, was the best quarterback in the NFL for 2026. My guy, Josh Allen, talking to me earlier today on my SiriusXM radio show. And listen, I am really fired up about Josh Allen and his Buffalo Bills team. If you're a fan of the Buffalo Bills, I really think this is the year. And I know you've heard people like me say this before in the month of August. But it feels different because there are so many new things. And Josh Allen hit it right there. Joe Brady. And there are so many things to like about Joe Brady as a new head coach and his authenticity, his energy, the vibes, the positivity, the direction, the coaching staff he put together for first-time head coach. I love Jimmy Leonard as the defensive coordinator. What I also love about Joe Brady, he's not Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott had to go. I have loved the Bills. I've loved Josh Allen for a long time in terms of picking them as a team that could do damage and dominate and finally win that elusive Super Bowl for the long-suffering Buffalo Bills fans and for everyone in lovely Western New York and Bills Mafia nationwide. The holdup to me, and I've said this for years, Sean McDermott. Sean McDermott won a lot of games, great regular season coach, terrible in the playoffs, terrible in terms of in-game management. The 13-second game against Kansas City he'll never get over. And last year's debacle against Denver, it just felt differently. So I supported the Pagulas for making that coaching change. And listen, Joe Brady is Josh Allen's guy. And I think that you're going to see Josh Allen have an unbelievable season. What does that mean? I'm talking about another MVP campaign for our guy, Josh Allen. Because it's all there set up for success. You have the gorgeous new stadium. The new Highmark Stadium is going to be amazing. The way they built that thing, it's going to be incredible. And it's going to be just like Seattle. Look at this in terms of how it's built, where you have all the different stands on top of each other, and it's enclosed. So this way, the noise is going to be deafening, and Bills Mafia is going to be going nuts. And Josh said, look, stadium's great. Once we have our first home game and it's a loud third down and they score a touchdown, the joint's going to be jumping. So I think that, you have a new head coach who is fantastic. You have a new stadium, which is fantastic. You have new uniforms, which I think are fantastic. You have a new number 1 wide receiver in DJ Moore. That changes everything. And oftentimes when you see a transaction in the NFL and it's a wide receiver, ultimately you need time. You need time for chemistry. Could be a trade, free agent, a first-round draft pick. DJ Moore and Josh Allen, we've talked about it here on Schein Time. They are light years ahead of the curve when it comes to a rapport. You also don't have to have an educated guess on whether or not DJ Moore can handle success and expectations and playoff situations and rivalry games. Go ask a Packer fan how on a couple of occasions you saw DJ Moore break their hearts last year in the playoffs. And look at this. The only thing missing from my guy Josh Allen's resume is a Super Bowl. When I say he is the best quarterback in the NFL 2026, and there are other great ones, obviously, Patrick Mahomes, who's coming off a major injury and doesn't have the wide receivers and the weapons that Josh Allen does. We could talk Matthew Stafford, talk Lamar Jackson, talk Joe Burrow. Josh Allen, what he does as a thrower, as a runner, he's tough, he's clutch, he's motivated by winning the big one, but in my conversation with him, he wouldn't get past week 1 in the Houston Texans. It's week by week, one by one, and that's not lip service. He doesn't go into the crystal ball because it's for him one game at a time. And look, he never beats Houston in Houston. The Bills struggle in Houston. Look at the schedule for the Buffalo Bills. It's not easy to start the season, and that game, when you look at it for the Houston Texans and the Buffalo Bills, that's a tough one. And then it's a short week. But look at the first 5 weeks of the season. We're talking about 5 teams that I believe will all be above 500. And I have 3 or 4 of them, Houston. That's the best defense in the NFL. House of Horrors historically for Josh. Detroit, obviously a lot of studs. That's the home opener, and Highmark's going to be absolutely rocking. Chargers, to me, are a playoff team. Patriots, listen, I don't think they're a playoff team this year, but we saw what New England did last year. And then, to me, could be a Super Bowl preview when you look at the Rams and the Buffalo Bills in week number 5. They survived that stretch, and I think at minimum they go 3-2, and frankly, I'll pick them to go 4-1. I think the Buffalo Bills are absolutely going to win 13, 14 games this year. I think Josh Allen's going to be the MVP. And I think with a new head coach and a new number 1 wide receiver and a new pass rusher in Bradley Chubb, who has given the Buffalo Bills fits when he was playing for the Miami Dolphins throughout the years, I think finally the Buffalo Bills are going to win a championship. I think that they did everything right in the offseason. I think signing Chubb was absolutely off the charts. People were ripping the contract, please. Did you see him last year for Miami going up against Buffalo? And, you know, Josh joked with me on our SiriusXM show today. He said, I told Bradley Chubb I hated him for all these years playing against him. Denver, Miami. This is the time. It's all there. Things have changed. Allen also told me he was certainly motivated and paid attention to Jalen Brunson and the Knicks. Loved how Jalen Brunson would never pose with the trophy, the Larry O'Brien trophy, and it was just one game at a time and on to the next, and never too high after a win, never too low after a loss. Brunson and Allen, very similar dudes in terms of how they go about their business as unbelievable athletes. Brunson and the Knicks able to end the Knicks' incredible droughts. And now you just feel it, right? You have to feel it that the Buffalo Bills, everything's going to turn out right for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills this time around. And I look at it in terms of the betting odds for the Buffalo Bills for this season. Bang the over. They will make the playoffs. They will win the division. They will win the conference. And yes, you should absolutely consider putting a buck on the Buffalo Bills to win the Super Bowl. They've never done it before, but it just feels like it's Josh Allen's time to shine. It's go time. The organization did all the right things with all the new elements. I think that's going to help out James Cook, who's going to be one of the top 5 running backs in the NFL. Help out Dalton Kincaid, who's going to be absolutely outstanding and have the best season he's ever had. Help Shakir. Help Keon Coleman. The pressure is off him. I can't stress it enough. The Buffalo Bills this year absolutely get it done. When you're talking about Josh Allen, you're not far away from talking about Lamar Jackson. But Lamar was far away from what we're used to seeing last season, especially as a runner. 349 rushing yards and just 2 rushing touchdowns. Does he expect that to change this season?
I believe you know, I know, a lot of people know. I was hurt last year too, you know, so
Yeah.
I really couldn't do anything like
Right.
I wanted to, you know, so it really would put my team in a good position if I was just running hurt, you know, losing yards, things like that was happening. But whatever it takes to win, that's what I'm all about. And I've always been about that too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so you think it'll be more in like the previous seasons as far as running the ball?
Whatever it takes to win.
I mean, that smile at the end from Lamar Jackson's unbelievable. I think the world of Lamar Jackson. I think he is a terrific ball player, two-time MVP, and I think Lamar is going to get back to the level that we're accustomed to when you look at him running the football. The numbers obviously fell off, and he clearly was not 100% last year, and sometimes stats lie. I want you to stare at this. The games missed, the rushing yards, the rushing touchdowns, the rushing yards per game. I mean, this is a perfect snapshot of the difference between a healthy Lamar Jackson and a not healthy Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is healthy. He's ready to rock and roll. And he's obviously a fantastic thrower of the football. He's obviously someone who is super smart and has a live arm and makes every throw, and they've got the requisite weapons. I don't think Derrick Henry is shot in any way, shape, or form. And I think, though, as Henry gets up there in age, and let's be honest, Father Time, especially with bigger running backs, is always undefeated. I still think Henry can run brilliantly at that Hall of Fame level. I think Jackson will help him out. Now, there's a new coach when you look at the Baltimore Ravens, just like there's a new coach for the Buffalo Bills. And Jesse Minter, all eyes are on him. And just like in Buffalo, they hired someone who knew the star quarterback. Same with Baltimore. Because Jesse Minter, you have to understand that he was on the defensive staff for John Harbaugh before he became the defensive coordinator for the Chargers for the last 2 years under Jim Harbaugh. And getting someone in that building who understands Raven culture, the Lamar way, who Lamar is, what he does, what he's capable of. I really think that the Baltimore Ravens did the right thing, which is not a surprise because top to bottom, that is an excellent organization. Now, take a look at the Ravens odds board for this upcoming season. I think Cincinnati is the team to beat in the division. I'm very high on the Bengals. Burrow, Chase, Higgins, Dexter Lawrence. I think Baltimore, when you look at the odds board, the only potential play would be the over on wins. There is not a bet on this board I love. I'm taking them to make the playoffs. No juice there. Maybe you could put that in a parlay. I am not taking them to win the division. Now, if you notice, they have the same Super Bowl odds as the Bills, which means in Vegas, the two favorites out of the AFC to win the Super Bowl, win the conference, the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo Bills. I don't believe in Baltimore, talent-wise, that they can keep up with Buffalo. The AFC is loaded. I think Lamar is going to have a monster year. I think the NFL is always better when Lamar's out there doing his thing. Unbelievable special talent, unbelievable guy, great face of a franchise. He's going to run more, which means Baltimore is going to win more, which means the NFL is going to be a better place. Love Jesse Minter, right guy, right time. I am much higher on Josh Allen and the Bills than Lamar Jackson and the Ravens for this upcoming season. There aren't many bona fide quarterback competitions still being decided, and I'm sure if it were up to Michael Penix Jr., there wouldn't be one in Atlanta either.
Based on the timeline that you're on, do you feel like you could start week one? You'd be ready to go in terms of reps and the way you feel?
Yeah, I feel great. Like right now, I got cleared to do 11 on 11 for practice. Obviously, but each and every day I'm getting better, getting more confident. I'm not playing this week because, obviously I only had 3 practices under my belt under doing 11 on 11 stuff. But I've been feeling really good. And, as long as I keep the track that I'm on, I definitely feel like I will be where I need to be mentally and physically, to feel confident enough to go out there in week one. And, as far as, being healthy and all that, I feel good.
So Michael Penix Jr. is cleared for 11 on 11. And Kevin Stefanski talked to the press yesterday and said Penix will not play in the third and final preseason game for the Atlanta Falcons, which I think is supremely smart on the part of Kevin Stefanski. And Tua Tagovailoa, according to Ian Rappaport over at the NFL Network, has been unplayable in terms of being a guy that can be the starting quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. And that's not Skip Bayless offering an opinion. That's Ian Rappaport, a true journalist. Listen, I think Michael Penix Jr. has to start. And Kevin Stefanski was pretty honest talking to the press yesterday, saying he's not being coy, he's not trying to play games, but at the end of the day, he's not going to name a starting quarterback until he has to, before the Steeler game week 1 of the season, which if you have to put out a depth chart, let's say, the day before a game or 2 weeks from today, whatever it is, that's when he might name a quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons. It can't be Tua, though. Tua Tagovailoa has been dreadful. It's one thing, when you have to analyze when positive practice reports are in fact truthful, because everyone has great vibes in August. All the reports from Atlanta, the vibes for Tua, the play from Tua in practice, in training camp, we've seen it in the games. It's been deplorable. I hated the signing, as you know, when they signed him. And I love the brass. I love Matt Ryan. Love Kevin Stefanski. Tua Tagovailoa is terrible at football. Turns it over, can't stay healthy. Was dreadful. They kicked him out with the Miami Dolphins. A smart group made a bad decision bringing in Tua Tagovailoa. So that's why, as long as Penix gets through next week with the 11 on 11, of course he's your week 1 starter. Because Michael Penix Jr. is entering year 3. It was always a mistake when the old brass signed Kirk Cousins, then drafted Michael Penix Jr. Never made any sense at all. He then played when Cousins was benched, being terrible, had a great opportunity to make the playoffs. His old coach, Raheem Morris, screwed up the Washington game. That's ancient history. But last year, supposed to take a next step, and he was okay, then got hurt. So it's not hyperbole to say that, especially year 3, with an entirely new coaching staff and front office, Penix is playing for his future with the Atlanta Falcons, which takes us back to the quarterback situation. I think Michael Penix Jr. gives them the best chance to win. I also think it's so incumbent upon the Atlanta Falcons to find out if Michael Penix Jr. is the guy. Let me state for the record, I think Penix absolutely can be the guy. If we see the Penix from 2024 to 2025, no. But that team was so poorly coached on offense, poorly coached in general. And I think that Penix under Stefanski, and remember, Penix, not Tua, has the reps of throwing to Bijan Robinson and throwing to Drake London and throwing to Kyle Pitts. You need to figure out, ultimately at the end of the day, if you are going to see the Atlanta Falcons make the right decision and start the guy. Take a look at the schedule. Who can win the NFC South? Also, you can figure out if you need to go big in the quarterback business in 2027. Listen, they're not going to win week 1. Week 2, they absolutely could win. Let me tell you something. Week 3, week 4, there's a shot. Not to mention home games, albeit teams that have a lot of talent with Baltimore, Chicago, and San Francisco. So I think you need to let Michael Penix Jr. be the guy. It can't be Tua. Frankly, I would consider cutting Tua Tagovailoa. Michael Penix Jr. has the upside, the arm talent, the rapport with the stars all over this team. I think it's a no-brainer. If he's healthy, you start Michael Penix Jr. Got to find out what he brings to the table at the quarterback position. Also, the good news is he's not Tua. Up next, one of the preeminent voices in college football joins us to break down not only the upcoming season, but the chaos of last week and where things stand right now. You see him right there. My guy Josh Pate joins us next on Schein Time. Joining me right now is the host of Josh Pate's college football show. It's outstanding. You can find it right here on YouTube. Now an ESPN contributor. You can also catch him Fridays on Bussin' and Pate on Campus. One of the leading voices across this great nation when it comes to college football, the one, the only, my guy, Josh Pate. Josh, welcome to Schein Time.
I'm shining for you. I mean, look, I came dressed and ready to go as only I can. How you been, man?
I've been great, man. It's been a minute. It's good to catch up with you. I'm just thrilled for your success. I'm not surprised in any way, shape, or form. And listen, if I had my votes, you would be the commissioner of college football. And love your show, love watching you on ESPN. I can't wait to chop it up with you. And before we get into the action on the field, look, This week has been filled with nonsense and court rulings and conferences banning players from returning to the college ranks. Lane Kiffin, as is often the case, finds himself at the center of it. How do you see this playing out? What's your all-encompassing take on Daquan Wright and others when it comes to college football?
Yeah, I was a little bit different on this. I noticed when the story started to break, everyone, started to point a finger towards maybe the players or maybe Lane Kiffin. And he wasn't the only coach, but he was the face of it all. I don't know. I just looked past all that. Not that I didn't feel that in my core like the rest of the free-thinking world did, but I was angry beyond that. Like Lane Kiffin, not to carry water for the guy, but I have no expectation for competitors not to pursue every possible competitive edge just because they adhere to some societal moral code. I don't count on them to do that. So I have no expectation of that. So I'm not disappointed when someone tries to bend the rules. The optimum word there, of course, is rule. In a normal world, in a normal sport, we have well-defined rules.
Yep.
If you take steroids, for instance, that's against the rules. You pursued an edge, it's against the rules, you get popped. Well, in college football, when we try and enforce rules, it turns out it's illegal. And so it gets tried in a court of law. And so, right now, you've got leagues trying to work around court rulings to essentially scare their member institutions straight, which I don't fault them for. Because in lieu of being able to enforce rules, that's probably what I would do if I was the SEC or Big Ten commissioner. But I look beyond a face of it. I looked at the overall systemic problem that is a long way from being solved.
I want to get into the games and some storylines, and I love your take on how we need to have rules here, no question about it. Let's get to the most relevant game, Week 0. Bill Belichick and North Carolina, they're going to kick off year 2 against TCU in Ireland, which is all sorts of cool. Look, Belichick. I think he's the greatest coach in the history of the National Football League. Shame on me. I thought he was going to be really good to great last year. Is he going to make it through the season? Make it past this season? Any expectations for Belichick at UNC this year?
Yeah, I'm gonna warn you now. I'm gonna ask you a question in about 20 seconds.
Okay.
So prepare for it. No, I don't think he'll make it through the season. It's what it feels like to me. I feel like a lot of the process that went into hiring him was really backwards. It was quintessential college football in a way because you had dual coaching searches going on. But what I wanted to ask you to tee this up is you said you had high expectations. You thought he would win. I didn't think he would win. I had my reasons. I want to know what your reasons were for thinking he would succeed.
Because of what he did in the pros, where he would take a roster that was good and make it great. He would take a roster that was great and turn it into a championship team. I think, Josh, he always had that special gift of putting guys in the right position to be successful. His X's and O's were better than everyone else's. The way he would teach, the way he would motivate. So I wasn't saying championship. I wasn't saying top 2 or 3 in the ACC, but I thought they'd be a solid football team, and I was dead wrong.
You know what surprised me the most about it is I feel the same way you do about Bill's resume, so there's no need to debate that. I was really surprised at a guy that I think's really sharp and an organization, because it wasn't just him, being really sharp that was collectively ignorant enough to think they could come to college, and because it was college football, it would be easier than winning in the pros. And that's a big misnomer. Now, if he took the Notre Dame job, the Texas job, the Georgia job, it is easier to win there than it is in the NFL because relative to the baseline of the competition, you have a leg up in terms of resource. But that's not what he inherited. So he came from a world where everyone was pretty well crammed to the middle, and therefore whoever the best tactician is, whoever the best organization builder is, whoever the best X's and O's guy is will win. He came to a world where you're working at a disadvantage and you're looking up at what the baseline is. And at that point, it really doesn't matter if the University of North Carolina has a great tactician. Mario Cristobal just has way better players than you. And to think that wasn't going to be a much bigger factor, and that's not even to mention all the other mess that went into the hiring process, it boggled my mind that they thought it was going to be that easy.
Yeah, I'm with you. There was almost an arrogance, right? Mike Lombardi, I think, is certainly part of that. And look, like you mentioned Miami. I think the world of Cristobal Ball and what he's brought to the table for that program. And he's been an assistant coach and a head coach for a long time, and I just think he's fantastic. And I watch your show religiously. I know you have Miami winning the championship. Take us through the why.
Yeah, the only doubt I really had about them, probably twofold. One was you lost some special pass rushers. And so I wanted to know, we use the term backfill all the time. I know you don't have a one-to-one backfill that matches Reuben Bain. You probably don't collectively have the pass rush statistical backfill to replace what he and Mesidor did. You probably don't have a Frankie Mauanoa on your roster. I'm more, the Billy Bean Moneyball thing. Well, in the aggregate, what do we add? In the aggregate, what are we? And not that they're moneyballing it at all down there. Or if they are, it's a way different brand of Moneyball. I just think the cumulative competitive depth they had there, even last year, was underrated. And I think there are a lot of guys that weren't household names that will become household names by necessity this year. I also really love them at corner. I really love that Corey Heatherman made such an impact year one as a defensive coordinator last year, but people kind of forget it was year one. This is year two with him having that secondary back, him having, I think, plenty good enough of a pass rush, plenty good enough of a run-stopping element on the interior, not to mention going too deep at those positions, but also at my baseline, at my core, I trust the raw talent they have on the offensive line to be developed and coached as best you can at the college level, because the head coach there, not only him, but also his O-line coach are two of the best in the game at doing that. And most importantly, all due respect to Carson Beck, I think they upgraded at quarterback and have a phenomenal running backs room and wide receiver room. And there's just not that area on their team where I circle with a red Sharpie and say, boy, that terrifies me. They don't have it. So I think at their best, they're more dynamic than anyone can be.
I love that, and I'm with you. They don't have what you would perceive on paper before the season a negative, and I'm obsessed with Mario as a head coach. Let me give you my pick to win it all, and I want to, because you have the expertise, so I want to get your take on it. And I'm not, splitting the atom here. Oregon. I've liked Oregon for a while. I love the head coach. I'm obsessed with the quarterback. They've got a lot of returners on defense. These are a couple things that I look for. If they can win the tough games, and I think they can, in that conference, it'll obviously give them experience to win in January. What's your read on Oregon this year?
I got them playing for the national title. So, I believe in them. I think so you and I both obviously believe in them. Let's try and pick them apart. Let's say if it doesn't work out, why would it not work out? I think the first thing may be, we saw Dante Moore get heated up a few times last year in big games, and it didn't go well. Now, that's most quarterbacks, by the way. Not many quarterbacks are good under that kind of fire. If that's the case, and he's getting heated up a lot, it's probably because that offensive line just never was better than average. And if they're going to have an Achilles heel, that's it. Now, the flip side of that coin is if that offensive line is moderate to good or better, you've got a stud quarterback there. You got a guy that probably would have been a first-round draft pick had he come out last year based on tools alone. And elsewhere on that team, everything you need to win is there. I hear these people say all the time, Dan Lanning can't do this. Oregon can't do that. And on our show, we say all the time, cannot does not equal, or have not does not equal cannot. So he hasn't done it yet. And they've been blown out the last two playoffs that have come to an end emphatically against Ohio State and Indiana. And I just wonder, from a psychological perspective, is that a hurdle for them? And I can't really know that. But I know what would greatly absolve that concern is seeing them in a big game. Let's say they face Notre Dame, they face Texas, and just 34-21, just put it on them. Then I think that's a team that could feel unstoppable in the playoffs.
I think college football, from a competitive perspective, is in a lot of ways, Josh, the best it's been ever, where you can honestly pick 6, 7, 10, 12 teams that I think can be in the championship game. And look, then you have, the whole Indiana situation from last year, which to me is the beauty of college football now. So if I told you the 2026 national champion is not Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, Miami, Notre Dame, or Texas, who would you bet on and why?
You put Indiana in there, right?
I did not.
Maybe it's just Indiana again. Maybe maybe everyone wastes all spring and summer looking for a reason why it can't happen again. And I went and watched, I was up at like 1 o'clock the other morning watching random Josh Hoover TCU highlights.
Of course.
And I tried to picture that guy having to do it all for TCU in an Indiana uniform, not having to do it all, playing behind a wonderful offensive line, playing with a phenomenal defense that's probably going to ask him to score 24 a game instead of 44 a game. And I thought about the collective DNA, sort of the cultural aspect that it took to achieve the level they played at last year, which I know we all appreciated it in the moment. I think you probably need a decade or so's removal from that to have proper perspective on how special that season was last year. I don't think that just walks out the door once some big time players walk out the door. Now, sure enough, it's hard, really hard to replace it. And even if they had it last year, it really came down to Mendoza making some incredible plays against Penn State, putting his face in the fan against Ohio State, doing the same thing against Miami. So, that's really what these seasons come down to. But if you tell me, the top 3 or 4 aren't going to do it, I'm putting Indiana right in there.
We talked from an Oregon perspective about, okay, we have to see it, right? And I love Oregon. You love Oregon this year. What's your take on Texas? Because for me, look, they might be the most talented team in the country, and I love Sark. There is a part of me, I kind of need to see it. How good, how great could Texas be this year?
They could be the best team in the country. They could win the national championship. At their best, we could be sitting here in December watching them finish a 12-0 regular season, winning the SEC championship game, and we could be saying to ourselves, wow, we really overthought the room. Wow, we suffered from paralysis by analysis of just, it was so clear that roster was right there. Why didn't I pick them? That's them at their best. Now, since we hadn't seen that from them, I think it's totally fair to have the doubts. Look, them facing Georgia 3 times in 2 years and going 0 for 3 and it being for the same reason every time, Georgia did that, and you didn't have an answer for it. Even if it's not Georgia you've got to go through, you'll deal with that against Ohio State, or if it's not them, you'll deal with it against Notre Dame or Indiana. So someone's going to make you be more physical than a supremely physical counterpart. And we haven't seen Texas fit that description. So for all the talk about Arch, for all the talk about Cam Coleman and those running backs they added, and they're incredible defensively. I think they could be a defensive-oriented team if they needed to this year. It still comes down to being more physical in one of those high-level physical matchups. And that is a great unknown until they do it. And I think it's totally fair on the other side of the coin, if you're a Texas fan, to look at it and say, no. You better win it this year. You don't get to have this kind of roster. You don't get to invest this much. We don't invest this much emotionally and financially to settle for just making the playoff. I mean, those are lofty expectations, but I think Texas is the only team in the SEC that could reasonably expect a championship or bust type outcome.
Is there a new blood playoff team you have this year, a program outside the usual suspects that you think can make the college football playoffs?
Yeah, it's going to be tight. It's USC. That's the team that I'm rolling the dice on a little bit.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a tough schedule. It's a young team in some places. We were just looking at their depth. What is it, 5 true freshmen that it looks like they're going to start. But now that's from the #1 overall signing class in the country. Luke Waffle, as an example, is an edge player, 6'5", about 260. That's the kind of player that would play for an Alabama or a Georgia or a Notre Dame. Like, that's the kind of guy that would get on the field anywhere. Just so happens he signed with USC. I really worry about them, though, if they don't handle that Oregon game early and it goes sideways. They got several other games coming up. I mean, they got to go to Penn State not too long after that for the whiteout game. Like, they are going to be put through the fire this year. And so if they can come out bloody and battered and scarred, but if they can come out 10-2, they will have earned it. And it will also mean that line of scrimmage play there is finally what it needs to be. And Jaden Maiava in year 3 at quarterback under one of the great quarterback coaches in this country, and Lincoln Riley, really did level up. And if that's the case, then I'm fine rolling the dice on them making the playoff.
Which head coach is on the hottest seats, in your opinion, to start the season?
I almost feel like Mike Norvell should have his own category here at Florida State. I mean,
Fair
that's
enough,
like that.
yes.
Yeah, like you know, I cover this stuff year round, so this is like the 100th time I've had to answer this question, and I almost kind of say, "Oh, you mean beyond Mike?" So the FSU thing, I mean, it could get uncomfortable. It's already uncomfortable. It could get really ugly early because they don't have a backloaded schedule. So they play SMU early. They play Alabama early. They're going to have Miami early enough. I think that they've got like 5 or 6 losable games before Halloween. So if they're going to make a move, they may be making a move really early like some of these schools did last year. Outside of that, and we talked about Belichick already, I'm really interested to watch Wisconsin because Luke Fickell, I've not lost confidence in as a head coach. He's had horrible quarterback injury luck. He did not hire properly at the outset on the offensive side of the ball, and he's paid the price for that. Kind of the inverse of what Lincoln did. Lincoln hired poorly defensively, and he had to course correct. Well, Luke Fickell hired poorly offensively, but I think he's a good coach. And look, if it doesn't go his way this year, he's one of these guys I would look at and say, if he got fired, I'd hire him today. Because he's like the guy who kind of gets too far down the dead-end road and doesn't have enough gas to get back to the main road. If I could just get him back to the main road, if I could hit reset, I'd be totally confident turning my program over to him. It's not like the stuff he did to get Cincinnati to the playoff back in the day, he forgot. It's just he got himself into a little bit of quicksand early there.
I think the Heisman conversation preseason, Josh, is fascinating because I think you got to look at players, obviously, duh, but also teams. And it's a weird conversation. I mean, I think the best player pound for pound in college football is playing wide receiver at Ohio State. And to me, that would be my personal favorite for the Heisman Trophy. Oftentimes, it's a quarterback kind of award. Give us your Heisman pick, but also some names to watch when it comes to the Heisman.
Yeah, I'm picking Darian Mensah, who's the quarterback at Miami. So I'm kind of, tying that up with my national championship pick. If I were to go off the beaten path a little bit, back in spring, I was looking at the board, and at the time, Alabama had a quarterback battle going on. So Keelan Russell was, astronomical odds, and I just thought he'd win the job. So that alone made me think there's some value there. So we bet him back in spring, and man, we could cash that one out right now and almost double up our bet total. He is a special player, and they've got a good enough skill set down there around him where, Alabama's going to be in the mix this year. And if you're the quarterback at Alabama, and especially they can do RPO stuff they couldn't last year with Ty, that could be a name that comes from off the radar a little bit to be in the mix.
You can watch Josh Pate's college football show on YouTube and see Josh on ESPN's college football coverage all season long. Don't miss Bussin' and Pate on campus. It's going to be amazing. I can't wait for it. Every Friday this season on ESPN. Josh, you're the best, and we appreciate it as always.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Coming up, Tuesday I named the fans of the Cleveland Browns, the NFL fan base I felt the worst for. Well, some of you had something to say about that. And we've got some teams that appear headed for misery this season. Next on Schein Time. Top 5 NFL fan bases I feel the worst for. Number 5, the Jets. What is the expression? Same old Jets. Number 4, Bills fans. They have never won a championship. Close but no cigar. Number 3, the Detroit Lions. Rebuilding since 1957. Number 2, the Minnesota Vikings fans. They're constantly second fiddle to the Green Bay Packers and to the Chicago Bears. Number 1 on the list, the Cleveland Browns. I don't know how a Browns fan does it. If I'm a Browns fan, I would have to give up. On Tuesday's Schein Time, I gave you the 5 NFL fan bases I feel the worst for. This after, of course, the Browns named Deshaun Watson their starter. But there are some other teams that have arguments that were certainly in discussion for us. And listen, this is the beauty of Schein Time. We read all the posts that you give us on YouTube and X and Instagram, and we got some great responses on this specific topic. The first one comes from Corey John 5 on Instagram. And I think this is interesting because he's talking about the Chargers. And I will tell you, on my original list that I put together, I had the Chargers. Because if it wasn't for bad luck, the Chargers historically would have no luck at all. At the end of the day, the reason why I moved them to 7th on my list was because of that, San Diego. Because I think there are so many people who were San Diego Charger fans who are so angry still about the move to LA and didn't follow the team, or it impacts how you root for the team, that I didn't know if there were enough fans to feel bad for them over teams and fan bases like the Lions and the Vikings and the Jets and the Buffalo Bills. But I feel bad for you. You sound like a diehard. You've had to deal with all these bad losses, and Marlon McCree and Phillip Rivers, who I love, you know, what transpired in the playoffs a lifetime ago, and, you know, Nate Kading and all these bad moments for Charger history and injuries in the preseason, unfathomable stuff, you know, the Marty Schottenheimer teams that should have won the big one, could have won the big one. Oh, I feel for you. But that's why, because of San Diego, I didn't put you in my top 5. Next response comes from Mike O. Raider on Instagram. And he says, the Raiders. I will tell you, Mike O. Raider, and always appreciate you interacting with Schein Time and all the different shows that we have. I honestly think, the Raiders fan, I just feel awful for you guys. You guys have been through hell and back. Now, this is a team that also went through a move, and that's why I didn't put you guys in the top 5. I do feel bad, though, for how you moved and why you moved and how that whole thing went down. Now, listen, I do think, unlike the A's, the move from Oakland made a lot of sense for the Raiders. Frankly, they should have been the team, one of the teams that went to L.A., and the Chargers should have stayed in San Diego, but I digress. Listen, you have to deal with buffoonery, bad coaching, bad management. Mark Davis doesn't know what the hell is going on. Scandals, debacles through the years. You know, everything that has transpired with the Raiders, you know the history better than anyone. Raiders were 6th on my list. So, a couple of fan bases that I feel bad for always, the Raiders and the Chargers. Let's stay with the Raiders for a minute as they conclude their preseason at home tonight against the 49ers. Now, our pal, Vinny Bonsignore over at the California Post, outlines what Vinny's keeping an eye on tonight. Let's take a look at Vinny's list. And I think that Mike Washington is a huge key. You want to pay attention to him. And I love this draft pick when the Raiders made it. Thought it was fantastic. I'm a big Mike Washington fan, but obviously you need Ashton Genty to be back and doing Ashton Genty things, and that's why I was so upset when he got hurt. But we don't know if Ashton Genty is going to be there for week number 1, which is why seeing Mike Washington is everything. So I think that is my second storyline. My number 1 storyline is Fernando Mendoza. Because Fernando Mendoza still has a shot, according to Clint Kubiak, to be the guy. I would start him. And listen, he has been pressured and he has been hammered at a ridiculous rate. No one has been hit more. No one's been pressured more this preseason. I think these are good things for the Raiders. I really believe that. Because you want, at the end of the day, you'll want to see Mendoza get knocked down and get back up again and iron out the kinks that way. That's what I'm looking for. I mean, Kirk Cousins can't play. Loved Kirk Cousins in Washington, loved him in Minnesota. He's not a starting quarterback anymore in the National Football League. So, listen, I think the Mike Washington storyline is a huge one. I think Mendoza tonight, I hope he wins the job. I hope that is our lead topic tomorrow on Schein Time. I will tell you one other thing that's on Vinny's list, the wide receiver position. Listen, I think the wide receiver position is paper thin. I'll wager a guess that by the time next Tuesday rolls around, after teams get through week 3 of the preseason and the 53-man rosters and you start to cut everybody on NFL teams, I bet the Raiders have one or two new wide receivers who are going to be playing for them sooner than later. And I bet there's a receiver right now that's on another team that's going to be in the top 3 in catches for the Raiders this season. Seriously, that receiver room is a flat-out embarrassment. It's a who's who, I've never heard of you. I mean, it's bad stuff if you look at the depth chart at wide receiver. Luckily, Brock Bowers, to me, is still the best pass-catching tight end in the entire league. In addition to the Chargers and the Raiders, there are some other teams where their fan bases have arguments that they are the worst. And 2 of those teams, the Commanders and the Dolphins. And listen, one of the things you always, when you do what I do for a living, or if you're a fan, you have to guard against all the optimism in training camp. Everybody looks great, which is why when a team looks terrible, it's a problem. How about Washington? Laremy Tunsil is injured. The offensive line is a disaster. And how about this from Nikki Drahavla from The Athletic? She tweeted this, and she is a brilliant beat reporter. This is the worst I've ever seen the Commanders' offense in years. Inoperable offensive line. Listen, I think Washington is going to finish in last place. I think everyone's going to get fired. I think this team is absolutely dead on arrival. And now I want you to take a look at what Joe Shad tweeted from Miami Dolphins camp. Again, everyone's always fired up in the offseason, and this is problematic. At one point today, Malik Willis stopped Dolphins practice to call the entire offense together and deliver a message because they couldn't even complete the forward pass. By the way, 2 teams that have different expectations. This is year 3 for Jaden Daniels. Washington, in theory, should be thinking about making a run for the playoffs, and there's no way that happens. O-line is terrible. I don't like this roster. My NFC East prediction goes right now: Dallas, number 1, Philly, number 2, Giants, number 3, draw a line, Washington in last place. The Dolphins are doing the right thing, breaking it down to build it back up. There's finally a direction, but it's going to be a long season in Miami. But wait, there's more. Last, the NFL is eliminating the Pro Bowl games. Instead, they're shifting the focus to celebrating the honor of being a Pro Bowl selection. Beginning this season, 88 players will be named to the Pro Bowl class in late December with no replacement selections. So no AFC versus NFC game will be held. No skills competitions, no dodgeball, no throwing the pigskin around. None of that. They'll be invited as Pro Bowlers to be honored, an in-person celebration in Los Angeles during the traditional weekend that the Pro Bowl games would take place. Bravo. The Pro Bowl has been a joke for a long time. And when Shedeur Sanders made the Pro Bowl this past year, that was the unofficial, now official, time of death. Because it's one thing for everyone to drop out of the Pro Bowl, and there wasn't even a game. I mean, you're going to have Pro Bowl Shedeur Sanders on someone's resume, and then when you start talking about who should make the Hall of Fame, you look at Pro Bowls and you say, this is a joke. Now, I wish it was at the end of the year so you don't have players vote for, who they work out with in the offseason, and friends and former teammates and who they share an agent with. I wish they did it and it wasn't the actual players at the end of the season, but this is much better. Honestly, and I used to love the Pro Bowl back in the day. I mean, Peyton Manning throwing the ball to Chad Johnson, Sean Taylor, the late Sean Taylor wrecking people. That was fun. That's dead. That's a long time ago. Once it wasn't after the season, once it was no longer in Hawaii, it was time to kill the Pro Bowl. Honor the players. No one could back out of getting an honor. This was the right move. Should have been done a long time ago, and I give Roger Goodell credit. Next step, just get rid of the NBA All-Star Game. That's the show. If you miss any portion of the show, just do what I do, because I love me. Go to our new YouTube page. Like, subscribe, watch. Enjoy yourself. You're welcome in advance. At Schein Time. See you tomorrow on Schein Time.